What's up, everybody? Hello, and this is a tutorial that I have been waiting to make for quite a while. The reason why is because this tutorial can be used for people who are advanced users or people who have just started using Adobe After Effects. So, I've been sick lately. I've been wanting to do it actually for the past like 5 days, but some kind of sickness going around where I live, and I'm just starting to get over it, so sorry if I sound a little sick or whatever. But so first off, let's just jump right into it. So let's start out with a new composition. Go ahead and go ahead and go to File, Import, and here I have some Dirt 3 footage I took with a program called Fraps. This lets me record my video game footage, and it's pretty sweet. I picked this because, as you can see, this game has a nice neutral colors. It's not overly saturated, but it's not lacking saturation at the same time. So it's perfect because I could just show you how to really show you both ways on how to both saturate your video correctly and how to desaturate your video correctly. I'll get more into why you'd want to do one of those in just a bit. Right now I'm just trying to line up my footage. Okay. Alright, so first off, I'm just going to get everything to fit to the size here of the composition. Alright, so first off, I'm a cinematical kind of guy. I like having a lot of saturation in a video. I think it looks pretty cool. So I'm going to start out showing you how to how to saturate your video in a nice and subtle way, but at the same time it looks really good. You don't want to overdo it. Definitely don't want to overdo it, so it'll look really, really weird. So to start out, I'm going to teach you how to do it in a way where everybody can do it, and then I'm going to show you the way I want to do it. Now, the only difference between doing this in a beginner's way or an advanced way is just really how much time you want to put into it. Obviously, if you just spend like a few seconds just throwing some effects on, you're not going to get something that looks quite as crisp as something that you really spend some time to really look at your image and want to manipulate it to get really what you want. So to start off, let's start off with something simple in the color correction. So let's say we want to just simply make things look a little more vibrant. So we'd add maybe a vibrance filter. So, you know, we can make it a little more vibrant. As you can see, as we bring this up, we're seeing a lot of green that's being put out here. Now, obviously, this is way too much. It's adding some halo over here, so maybe up to like 40. I mean, it really just depends on what you think looks good. You want to make it look subtly better. You don't want to like overdo it like that. There's a lot of it, you know. Obviously, that is way too little, but yeah. So to my eyes, 40 seems about good. Maybe a little more saturation. And so pretty much what you want to do is you want to get your colors to look the way you want to. So like obviously in this video we have a lot of vegetation, we have dirt, water. So for the most part we have green and sandy like colors. So this is pretty much going to bring out both of those. Now, cool thing we can do is one of the cool things you can do about color correction is you can actually add a tint to your video to get it to kind of look like how you want it to look. Like, obviously, but like if you want it to look like it's in the morning, evening, if it's cold outside or warm outside, you can add a tint to get it to look the way you want. So this is a morning scene. It's bright yellow, smallish tint. So if we wanted to make it look like it's evening, we pick like a goldish color, kinda, and obviously that's a little over tinted right there. So about 13. So as you can see, from here to here, everything looks a little more goldish like, and that kind of gives it more of a evening like feel. So yeah, so that looks pretty nice actually. Maybe a little too much. Yeah, so that kind of looks like evening. You want to typically change the white color because this is going to change pretty much all the colors you can see on the like highlight spectrum. That's what it's going to change. If you change the black, it's going to make the shadows change a different color. And so typically you want to stick with white. Shadows kind of just makes the darker colors look more like something. So, or like if you wanted to make it look cold outside, adding a bluish filter would kind of work here. But it's kind of a bad idea for this particular video because it's quite obvious that it's sunny outside. So it doesn't really work that well. This would be perfect if you were trying to, like if you were working on a scene that involved rain or cloudy outside, but obviously not because there's sun right there. So it doesn't really look very good. But typically if you're going for a cold scene, you'd also be desaturating it too. But right now I'm teaching you how to saturate it, so that's kind of counterproductive. Anyways, so let's say we wanted to go for a nice tint here. Just to kind of make it look like evening a little bit more. Now, obviously I'm not spending as much time on this as I wanted to. Like, if I really wanted to make this look like evening, I would really mess around with the color a lot more just to get it just right. But, you know, for the sake of time, I'm just going to say this is basically kind of how you'd want to do it. So once you have your color looking the way you want to, I mean, you don't have to add a vibrance. You can go in here, go straight to hue and saturation if you wanted to change that. And you know, you can mess around with a lot of these. A lot of these can do the same things or can do different things. You know, maybe add an exposure. It does exactly what you think it does. It allows you to have more light being exposed or less light being exposed. So if I wanted to make it seem a little brighter outside, I could do that. So it's kind of your choice, really. It's all about getting it to look exactly the way you want it to look. So pretty much when you have your color going and everything, I like to add a nice curves adjustment at the end just to give there more depth. And you see right here, I like it when it looks a little more overdone like this. Like this is a little too much, but I kind of like it. However, that's just me. That's my own personal preference. I'd say most people might want to go for a smaller S curve here. I like to put one in the middle to kind of mediate it a little better. I like a video with harsh shadows and harsh lights. I don't know why. I think it looks nice. So it's something you can do. You don't have to, obviously. This is all up to you. And then if you stretched your video to fit the comp size, which I don't usually recommend this because this will degrade your quality. However, if you have a weird monitor like mine, which is 1440 by 900, that's an aspect ratio of 16 by 10. And that's really weird because, you know, typically you'll see 4 by 3, which is standard definition aspect ratio for videos, and 16 by 9 for widescreen aspect ratio in videos. When you have 16 by 10, that's just kind of odd. So I kind of stretch it anyways just because I don't like 16 by 10. So if that's what you did, you can add a sharpen filter. I like to use unsharp mask because it doesn't really sharpen the entire image. It just kind of sharpens the details of the image, which I kind of like. So in this particular case, I'd put it to like 80, radius to about 0.1, and then like 3. So that's kind of how I would make it look more saturated. Now, this is the way you can do it for anybody because these effects should be in your version of After Effects. If you're using CS4 or lower, I don't think you're going to have vibrance. But that's fine because you could just add hue and saturation. You might have vibrance, I don't know. But I know that CS5 and CS5.5 has these effects too. So, let's go back for a second here. Now, if I was to show you the way that I would usually really do it, like if I was spending a good amount of time on this, I would use Synthetic Aperture's Color Finesse plugin. Now, I really, really, really like this plugin. I think it does an amazing job because it gives you really good control over the color. Like, as you can see, we have a master channel, highlights, midtones, and shadows. And we have a lot of settings for each one. And that's perfect. So in the clip we have right now, we have a good amount of shadows and we have a good amount of midtones. So how do I know this? Well, that's because you can just tell that there's shadows like next to the car from the trees, and that the trees and the gravel, they're not bright, but they're not necessarily dark colors. So that would make it a mid-tone, and we don't have a lot of highlights. So we're going to be doing mid-tones and master, and maybe we'll mess with the highlights a tad. So with the mid-tones, I would take the vibrance, maybe move it up a bit, small bit on the saturation, and barely a little bit of contrast. Shadows obviously add some contrast. Highlights, give it a small amount. And master, we're going to add some saturation and some vibrance. And then a little more contrast. And then just click on OK. Now at first, this doesn't really seem like it did much. Like if I turn the effect off, turn it back on, all it really does is make the color look, you know, a little more, add some more, God, what is that word? Shadows, there we go. And it adds some more contrast. That is shadows. It adds more color. Wow, I cannot speak today. Okay, so we have a lot of saturation from this. Actually, not very much, just a little bit. But I like that, because that's exactly what I wanted here. The video was not really that bad as far as color goes. I mean, really, this doesn't need a lot of it. But I would prefer some more saturation, so that's what I did. You can do a lot more in color finesse. You can desaturate it and saturate it even more, but this is what I would do in this particular case. So then after that, and there's really not too much more to do. I would just maybe add a curves adjustment. Yeah, that looks really good. The lights are pretty light and the shadows are nice and dark, and we still have a lot of quality. And then, I mean, really, as far as this video goes, that's really all I need. And obviously I would add an unsharp mask and whatever. So that's pretty much how I would do it. Obviously, if this video had some lighting issues, I'd add maybe like an exposure. Or if this video was like really low on color, then obviously in color finesse I would add a lot more color. So pretty much what you want to look for in your video is, you know, does it have a lot of mid-tone colors? Does it have a lot of shadows, a lot of highlights? And then when you go into color finesse, that's kind of what you're going to be able to control. The difference between color finesse and that vibrance filter I had was mostly just the vibrance filter pretty much changed the master, which is all of the color. But in color finesse, you can control the highlights, midtones, and shadows, which is pretty cool too. You can do the same thing in curves with contrast, or you can mess around with red, green, and blue. That can also give you some tone. If you don't like using tint, you can use curves too. So like if I wanted to have some more green, I can do that. Make things look a little more green. And then like if I didn't want any blue, I can get rid of any blue that's in here. Increase the red a bit. So it can give you a good amount of tone in your video. Actually, that looks pretty nice right there too. So messing around with how much of each color can give you a really nice effect as well. So now we're going to move on to what if you want to desaturate your video. Now obviously you'd want to do this when there's way too much color, way too much saturation, or if you're somebody who wants to make your footage look a little more realistic. Because if you go outside, colors aren't bursting out at you, blinding you with color. You know, there's a lot of, you know, neutral looking colors. Actually, it's kind of desaturated a little bit, in my opinion. But typically, if you're desaturating, you're going to be adding a tone, or you're going to make things look a little more realistic, or sometimes if you're just going for like maybe a horror film or something. I don't know. If you think it looks better too, it's just whatever kind of footage you have, you might want to do that. So what I would do in that kind of situation would probably just be to add a tint. Now you want some color, obviously, but maybe put it up to about 35%. So you can see a good amount of the color has left. If I show you a comparison here. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't use synthetic aperture necessarily, because we still might want there to be more of a color than like the rest. So obviously if we were going to desaturate, we want some contrast. So we can still make the color look good, but it'll make the tint look really good too. So as you can see, even though it's desaturated, it makes when you boost the color and then tint it, it actually makes it look better when it's tint, because it allows the color to be more diverse, but at the same time to still be tinted. Because when you tint it, it tends to look a little more flat, and you still want some contrast between your colors, even though you're tinting it. I'm sorry if I'm rambling on too much. I just trying to add some logic behind all of this, but maybe you're just following along and want me to get this the hell over with. So all in all, just tint it and just maybe add some contrast, because if there's a lack of color, you may as well make there be a big difference between the two. So that's kind of something you'd get. I decided to make it look more shadowy, but as you can see in a scene where the sun is, it's desaturated, and at the same time it looks good still, because you don't want it to look flat. Because if you just tinted it, yeah, it's tinted, but it looks kind of flattish. And then after color finesse, there's more color and more contrast. Than after the curves, there's a really good amount of contrast. Maybe there's a little too much color. Actually, I can tint it a little more. Yeah, I like color. Okay, so that's kind of the thing you want to stick to here. Regardless of what you pick, desaturated or saturate it some more, really what you're trying to do is just get your colors to look the way you want it to work pretty much. Tint it if you need to, and then add your contrast, and then sharpen your image if need be. So that's pretty much what you want to follow, is mess with your colors, tint or contrast or both, and then image optimization, such as sharpen if you really want to or not. So that's kind of the process that I like to do. I hope this helped. I hope that maybe by following what I'm doing here, you can make some pretty nice looking videos. Sometimes if you have like a crappy camera, you can still make it look pretty cool, because I mean, this shot right here looks pretty awesome. And then when you bring it back to normal, it doesn't look as good than as when you add all this stuff back onto it. So really, it's all up to you. I'm just showing you how to mess around with it, how I would mess around with it. So I hope this helped, and thank you for watching.